got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
Welcome back to the channel. Another DD Fantasy Football Rookie Mock Draft, talking 2025 rookies post Senior Bowl. As you can see, we were here for the last couple days of practice in Mobile. Myself, Shane, and Ray. You can follow them at the Ray GQ and at Shane is the worst. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Engage in the comments. We're going to have some different takes on some of these players now that we are through the Mobile practices after the Senior Bowl. And guys, this is going to be the immediate reaction. As you can see, we are not in our normal studios, but we wanted to get a mock fresh off what we've seen the last few days here in Mobile. We're going to do a 12-team Superflex Start 11 lineup format. And the only wrinkle is going to be a 1.75 tight end premium. We're going to go with the draft order on the screen, snake draft order, Shane, Scott, and Ray. So let's get started, boys. Shane, you are up 101. It's been pretty chalky. I doubt much has changed, but have at it, my friend.
No, I mean, a lot's changed since we last did this a month ago, man. We didn't have the Senior Bowl, so a lot of things have changed. Not the 101, Ashton Genty. There's no reason to belabor the point. We might as well get going. But, yeah, it's still Genty, baby.
Ashton Genty 101, 1.02. I am up. We've seen a couple different picks depending on the format. I think this is really just what's your flavor of the week? What is your league economy like? Do they like quarterbacks? Do they like receivers? Do they like tight ends? Do they like running backs? You could probably argue one of every position could go here. I think for me, because we've seen even more running backs on my radar now, it kind of feels like this is a spot immediately I'm thinking, okay, what can I get for this 102? But if I have to make the pick, I'm probably just going to roll with what I think is going to be the best asset. And maybe this is a little bit of a hot take for you guys, but I'm going to roll with just the RB2 of the class, in my opinion. And it could be one of a couple guys, but I'm just going to roll with Amari and Hampton at 102. At RB2. So we'll see where everyone else thinks that might be now that we've had the Senior Bowl. Could argue a tight end, could argue a quarterback, could argue a receiver. But Ray, you're up back-to-back 103 and 104. What are you doing?
Yeah, man, right here I'm going with my wide receiver one in the class. I'm going Ted McMillan here at the 103 spot. And because I've got back-to-back picks, I think within some shape, form, or order with the first 4 or 5 picks, it's going to be Genty, Hampton, McMillan. And right here, for the sake of this exercise, I do believe that Caleb Johnson, my RB 2, 3, 4 in the class, doesn't really matter. I think he's a tier 1 guy. We'll see where he ends up, and that will be the determining factor between he and Omarion Hampton for me. But right now, he's a tier 1 running back right there with Ted McMillan, Omarion Hampton, Caleb Johnson. Lock him in 104.
Pretty chalk. I think we've had most of our mocks have not included a quarterback in the top 3 or 4 picks, so this is pretty chalky for this group. 105, I'm going to break the trend. I'm going to go with Cam Ward at 105. I think if there's anything that has kind of changed in terms of me starting to listen to other Dynasty content creators, but also just how people are feeling about the quarterbacks here in Mobile, I kind of think there's going to be a quarterback that ends up being the consensus one that people chase. And I don't know where they're going to land, but I think if there's one I can almost put in, maybe not pen, but pencil, is Cam Ward going as the first quarterback off the board, and probably pretty high, whether that's the 101, whether there's a trade, whether there's a trade back, a spot to get him. I think he's going to be QB1 off the board, so I'll just make the safe pick at 105. So this is where it gets interesting, Shane. 106, probably through the rest of the first round, is where we might start seeing some different discussion based on our reactions here. Maybe not the players, but the impact that maybe the class has shaped a little bit differently since the Senior Bowl. 106, what are you doing here? And you get back-to-back at 107 as well.
Oh, well, that works out. Quinshon Judkins. We saw a lot of running backs this week, and I think, I'll just put his name out there. I think some people were holding out hope for Devin Neal to be the running back 3. I want to say it nicely. I didn't see it. You know what I mean? He looked fine. He didn't look special to me. Judkins, he had that special freshman season. He looked special in the national championship, and that's going to stick in people's minds. We've seen it before. When CJ Stroud, just in the game against Georgia a few years ago, had a really good game, stuck in people's minds in Dynasty. And I think the same thing is true of Judkins, especially as we get more information on these running backs.
107. What's next? It's tough. It's a tough spot.
Right. I mean, it feels like a cop-out just going Henderson. It does. But I'm going to go TreVeyon Henderson. A lot of the same reasons. I didn't see any other running backs step up to the point where they're going to overtake either of these two guys, I don't think. The wide receivers, there's still a lot to learn about them before I'll feel comfortable moving them above Judkins or Henderson. Probably going to get a little blowback on at least one of them falling here, but I'm okay with that. Like, I feel like the running backs are safer and have more ceiling, to be honest with you, at least these two running backs. So I'm happy that I could get these guys back to back, to be quite honest with you.
Ray, before I make my pick at 108, what do you think of those two picks? Because that does feel like the spot where if you could have traded out for something that you like better instead of just taking your RB 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it might be, like I can definitely see where the arguments for these guys after probably Caleb Johnson is I hope they land in the spot that I like. Otherwise, I'm going to just put another running back in that spot. But what do you think they're given? I'm going to take Shedeur Sanders, but that.
Yeah, I probably would have taken – I think that this is a spot where if you love Judkins and Henderson, you're excited. And if you're one of the people who are like, they're okay, but there are probably 3 more Judkins in this class. There's another Henderson or 2. I think you could make the case to prioritize the quarterback 2, the tight end 1, the receiver 2, opposed to the running back 5. In this class. And these are both guys that are probably projected to be day 2 picks, which is fine. But do you want a day 2 pick over the top 10 tight end, top 10 pick tight end, over a top 5 quarterback, top 10 quarterback today, right now? Henderson, okay, because he's got a superpower, which is his juice. Judkins, I like him, but I don't know. I think this will be one of those situations where post-combine we'll have more clarity because, like it or not, these guys are going to test. And we're going to have biases and preconceived notions coming out of the combine. Right now, I definitely feel like it's playing it safe with Judkins and Henderson because if Ward is worthy of the 105, based on projected capital, I don't believe that Sanders should be far behind. So those are my thoughts.
So I got to be honest with you. Yeah, this was a fumble on my part. I should have just gone with Warren with one of these picks, right? I should have had conviction on one of the running backs and just gone with them. And honestly, it's still going to be Judkins for me. Probably should have just went with Warren considering the format. And there's absolutely no way that if you're sitting at 108 and he's on the board, I guess sure you could go Sanders. I think it'd be really hard to pass up on him here. Not trying to convince you to take him to rectify my mistake. But I will say, like, if somebody is sitting here on and they don't have a pick, right, and 108's on the board and Warren's still there, probably everybody in the draft is going to do absolutely everything they can to get there. And I fumbled that. I made that mistake. So I might even try to send some capital like, ooh, what did I just do here? Let me send an offer to Scott. Maybe I can get back in there and fix it. But we'll see if somehow I can get him back coming up.
Well, let me talk through something alternative here. We just left Mobile. I feel real good about other tight ends. There's one quarterback that I know is getting drafted in the top 10. And he's probably not going to do anything to hurt that other than a bunch of fake narrative on this or that. But if I want a quarterback in this draft, I'm not saying you should want a quarterback in this range, right? But if I want a quarterback, I think you could say I'm trying to trade back in to get Shedeur Sanders, not a tight end, because there's a lot more tight ends to pick from. I don't feel real good about the QB 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to where we were taking those guys in the first in a lot of the mocks before. I'm pretty sure with us 3, another quarterback's not going to go off the board anytime soon. So I know there's bias against Shedeur, and I know who Ray's 2 picks are going to be after I go Shedeur Sanders. You can lock him in, Ray. But I'll tell you, between this pick and I think the two guys Ray's going to take, I feel no worse about these 3 picks than I do Judkins or Henderson. I feel like they're all – I'm glad I picked towards the end of the tier, especially if I was able to trade back a couple spots into this range, because I don't think Shane got any better value at 106 than Ray's going to get at 110. So lock in Shedeur. Ray, you're up at 109 and 110.
Wait, real quick. Just wanted to jump in. I mean, you hit on a good point and then you kind of brushed over it. Like, trade back here. Like, try to trade back here if you're not convicted. Like, if you don't want to go Warren and you don't feel Shedeur Sanders is something that you need or something that you want to spend this high of a pick on, maybe try to move back, pick up a late first and then a second on the, even if it's a mid second, would be a valuable move in this draft.
Ray, what you doing?
Yeah, you know what I'm doing right here. I'm taking Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State. And I don't want to do this exercise as though I've got 2 back-to-back picks. I want to make this as I'm drafting at the 109 as an isolated pick, because not everybody's going to have 109, 110, and be able to do that. If I were here and the board played out this way in a 1.75 tight end premium, although I love some of the other tight ends, I'm not passing on Tyler Warren right here. At 109, in this type of format, I would 100% take Tyler Warren. And if I'm sitting on the clock at 110 and Warren's off the board, Sanders is off the board, I'm not looking at another tight end. I'm not looking at any running backs. I'm looking at the receivers. And I love Emeka Egbuka. I believe Travis Hunter, and I've said it for almost a year, I believe he's a better wide receiver than cornerback. And today I am going to project that he plays wide receiver at the next level. If he declares as a wide receiver, or if there's any indication that he's going to play wide receiver as his primary position, I don't believe he would probably fall past the 105. So today, right now, give me Travis Hunter here at the 110.
So you agree with obviously we're not picking for the same teams over and over and over. Like you said, that's a great point, that we are all picking for individual squads. And my team at 108 might needed a tight end more than a quarterback. And yours at 109 might have gone, man, I really want a quarterback, and there's only one to take. So there could be some maneuvering in this range. But I think you agree, like these 3 picks, it probably mattered a lot more what these teams already had versus the overall value of the picks seemed to be very, very similar. The tiebreaker would have been the individual needs and the individual economy of that league. So I like it. I'm going to go Luther Burden at 111. I think you can go back and forth between him and Hunter. He seems to be somebody that, I don't know, Ray, it feels like Luther Burden got a little hate to start the draft process, and now there's a lot more people coming around like, man, he might just be the wide receiver 1 in the class, and, nobody's talking about it. So it feels like this is kind of a blessing to get him at the 111. But again, you may have another positional needs, and it could be a flat spot like Shane was saying. I think when people get to this spot, they also oftentimes don't actually trade down, because they see, oh man, this is Luther Burden is the wide receiver 2. He is a top 15 receiver, top 15 player in the draft. He's going to go in the top 15, top 20. I need more than what anybody in my league is going to pay to get him. And they don't actually make the trade back of, I'll trade the 111 for the 202 and a second. It's like you're either in with the process because you're willing to just lean into the next 3 or 4 picks as being equal, or you're not going to get the deal done. So there's Luther Burden at 111. Shane, you're picking on the turn. So keep in mind, this is the best team in the league and then the worst team in the league picking back-to-back. So what are you doing?
I'm the best team in the league. I'm probably feeling really good about adding Emeka Egbuka right here. Really, really good. Again, we'll get into the wide receivers. Some of the wide receivers we saw this week, I think had good weeks. But a lot of what happened this week made me feel better about the players that weren't there, and talking to some people that are real ball knowers, like, I don't know, Ray, it's kind of like if I liked what I saw here out of some players, imagine how good the players are, at least in the eyes of the NFL, that didn't even show up because they didn't need to. It just flat out didn't need to. And it helped set some tiers. Book is easy, right? Emeka Book is easy. This is where it gets a little difficult for me, right? Do I go with the tight end that wasn't here, right? Or do I go with some of the ones that were here because they balled out, punishing the tight end that wasn't here but was the consensus too? It's 1.75. I'm going to take Loveland. Like I said, the tight ends that I saw that were here, and I'm sure a bunch of them are going to start flying off the board soon. I really like them. I really, really like them. He's above that level. So I'm going to go ahead and grab him here, considering the format 1.75. I think if it was 2.0, he might even go earlier. Not might, he would have gone earlier, but 1.75, this feels like a good spot to grab the tight end 2 of the class.
Yeah, this feels like a spot at the 201 where there isn't a obvious pick, but you're trying to read your market and go like, what can I maybe turn this pick into? What narrative can I tell myself that this player could maybe deliver me something a little more down the road? Ray, before I get into my pick, I wanted to ask your opinion on the Senior Bowl didn't impact directly any of the top 12 picks. Like those picks they were a tier above or 2 tiers above anybody that was in Mobile, right? Do you think, though, that what we saw here and some of the narratives they're starting to form for other players, not that are first-round caliber players in rookie drafts, how has that shifted the approach to the first round? Because I think we even made a couple picks where what we've seen this week, or maybe what we're seeing now versus 3 weeks ago, has kind of changed how we tier those first-round picks. Does that make sense?
Yeah. This is a difficult question to answer because the Senior Bowl did not directly impact any of the guys that were selected in round 1. And quite frankly, I believe the same players who were going in round 1 2 weeks ago are still going in round 1 now. For me, what it has done is opened up another world of possibility to where if I were picking at the 108 and the option was between Tyler Warren and Shedeur Sanders, I'm okay passing on Warren, knowing that there are like 35 other tight ends in this class that project to be starting tight ends that are dynamic. They may not have the name cachet or the hype that Tyler Warren has had, but I am very confident that we're going to get another 5 or 6 starting tight ends out of this class, as well the running back position. If anything, it makes me more apt to invest in wide receiver early because I do believe there will be a bigger drop-off at that position than some of the others. So I still feel great about second and third round picks, and I'm excited to get more deeper into this mock because I believe in round 3, we'll definitely start to introduce and invoke some new names to this rookie draft space.
Well, great minds think alike. You and I have already had this conversation. We've had it with a bunch of other people here in Mobile. A week ago, I probably would have done something a little different with this pick. But after this week, there's still even a few more running backs that I have a little more confirmation on. And I think we've been pretty clear. We've shared this with our Discord community. We've shared it on social media. I think there is a clear drop-off from the receivers that were in Mobile and the ones that we haven't taken that were not here for a reason. And so we're getting into some scarcity game theory arguments now. Like if you want a receiver, it's probably going to be now or they're not going to be the best player on the board unless you really, really have some conviction on a player or two. So I'm going to go Matthew Golden here at 202. Just because I think there's only a couple more remaining, and I'm sure there's going to be some running backs that we saw in Mobile, some tight ends coming up soon, but I feel okay passing on those. And I think if it's a receiver-heavy market, especially in your league, there's going to be a couple people that are like, man, I really want to get the last receiver that has a shot of going in the first round, and it's Matthew Golden. So that's the pick. All right. Next up, we got Ray with 2. Ray, did I snipe you there? Would you have gone Golden for what you just said?
No, I would not have, but I would have taken Golden pretty soon. I may shock the both of you a little bit with this pick because if I'm sitting at the 203 spot and this board is unfolded in the way that it has, I still love 35 running backs. The receivers here, they're hit or miss for me. Trey Harris is good. I like Elick Eomanor. But right now, in a Superflex 1.75 tight end premium, I personally believe he's going to be a top 50 pick. I do not buy into the narrative that he blew people away here in Mobile, but I do believe that his skill set is going to warrant a top 50 pick. These are guys that get picked in this range. So right here at the 203 spot, I'm going to take Jackson Dart, quarterback out of Ole Miss. He's my QB3 in the class. While he didn't blow anybody away for me this week, I don't think he failed at all. I don't believe he went out there and failed. He didn't look miserable. He didn't look like he did not belong. He's got size. He played in the SEC, and a lot of people like Jackson Dart. So right here at the 203 spot, I believe he's going to be a top 50 pick. I think he's got talent. There is something there if he lands in the right spot. Hashtag situation matters is going to be big for me in 2025. But right now, when I look at all the players on the board, outside of praying to God that one of the running back hits or one of these tight ends or receivers ends up, I feel very confident in saying Dart will start at some point in 2025, and I want to take advantage of that if and when it does happen.
And I'll just say this, what you just laid out is the perfect example of using these second round picks to break ties towards the ADV, the sentiment. There's probably somebody that thinks Jackson Dart is even better than Shedeur Sanders, who went at the 108. And if he does anything or lands with an OC or a head coach that people are excited about, like, he's just QB2 regardless of the draft capital. So I think that's an interesting pick. You got the 204 as well. What you doing?
At the 204 spot, this is where there's some conviction for me at this point, because there are a couple of more wide receivers. There's some good running backs. But if I'm sitting here at the 204 spot for this format and the second round is sort of played out in this way, I'm looking at the board. This is a spot where I'm probably going to dive back into the tight end pool again. Warren is off the board. Colston Loveland is off of the board. I'm going to give you my first Senior Bowl shocker, and I believe that there is a real chance that this young man comes off of the board as the third tight end in this class. He weighed in heavier than we thought. He was bigger than we thought, and he was the most dominant offensive player here in Mobile, and I believe he's going to continue to put up an incredible showing at the Combine. In the history of tight ends that have come from the University of Miami have been out of this world. So right here, I'm going to pander to the format a little bit, and I'm going to draft Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. He was incredible this week, and he just looks like a legitimate tight end. I want Elijah Arroyo. For those of you who didn't see, Harold Fannin did not put his hand in the ground one time as an inline tight end. At practice, he played H-back and a lot of fullback. Arroyo, he is a monster. He is a very, very big tight end, very fluid, very fast, 1.75. I'm going to take Arroyo right here.
I like it. I honestly, about 15 seconds into what you were saying, I wasn't sure who you were going to pick.
So I knew. I absolutely knew. I didn't want Ray to do it, because if I would have done it, everybody would have been like, wait, Shane knows ball. Yeah, because that dude was an absolute monster. Ray loves talking about, dude looks different, right? And that's what I kept keeping in my mind when I was watching the players on the field. And that dude just stood out. Like, right? You talked about, dude, the dude could jump. His hands are great. His long speed, I don't know what happened in college, and Ray could speak to that a little bit. He's been digging into that film. But, man, they underutilized that kid, because he is an absolute beast. And, again, this is a spot where I probably would have tried to trade it up to if he was sitting on the board, because it's like, dude, if I'm looking at the players that could have a ceiling to be a legit difference maker, this kid is it. Like, he was special.
Can I just say this too? I preached this to Shane and Scott during our time in Mobile. It's not that I think Harold Fannin is any worse, right? But for months, the only narrative around Harold Fannin is just how dominant he was because of all the production he had last year at Bowling Green. And my expectation was to see that type of player on the field, the type of player that was head and shoulders above his peer mates, head and shoulders above the other tight ends here. And while he had a great third day, I believe, objectively speaking, he was the third best tight end in Mobile, behind Elijah Arroyo and behind Mason Taylor. So that doesn't mean Harold Fannin is any worse. But what I've said is now there's another narrative and story around him. And I do believe that there is a better narrative for some of these other tight ends that I believe probably Arroyo is going to test like a freak. I'm telling you right now, he's going to run fast. He's going to jump far. He's going to test like a freak. And because Fannin did not differentiate himself from even Mason Taylor or Elijah Arroyo, I'm going to trust that this young man is going to fit a team, in the pedigree and history of Miami tight ends is outstanding. So I want him in this format at this spot.
I'm just mad. I'm mad at Ray. I don't know if I can talk to him.
Well, that's the first Elijah Arroyo pick. So there's your first like real true impact from the Senior Bowl, with Elijah Arroyo going at the 204. I think this player coming into the Senior Bowl, there were some questions about it, and I think they were answered. There was another player that people drafted, myself included. I think Ray did it once. I think either John or Mitch did it once. Who was the next running back off the board? And there were a couple names that it was pretty consistently over this last 3 weeks on the channel. One of those guys didn't even bother to show up to Mobile. The other guy was everybody's pick to be by far the best running back in Mobile, and he wasn't. I'm going to draft the one that was, because I can easily write the script where this guy, he's 6 foot plus, he's 230 pound plus, he looks different than every other running back here, and people know the name. Ray already has it in there. It's Ollie Gordon. You may say, he's going to be a 3rd round pick. He's no different than 5, 6, 7 other running backs that are here, but I can also see the world where come closer to draft time, it's Quinshon Judkins and Ollie Gordon in the exact same tier. And it's, if you got Judkins at the 106 and you let Ollie Gordon fall to the 205, they're the same damn bet. So I'm going to go Ollie Gordon. I think there's a lot of ADV that is untapped with Ollie Gordon, and I'm not going to let him fall any further. So Shane, 206 and 207, you are up. I know you're still tilting about the Elijah Arroyo pick, but what are you doing?
It's bullshit. Absolute bullshit. I'm all flustered, right? This is how you get someone to make a mistake. I'm going to grab a receiver that's not here. I like him. I like him a lot. I called him like mini AJ Brown last time I drafted him, and it's not just the powder blue uniform. Like, it's more than that. Trey Harris. Give me him. Again, I don't want to keep harping on the same things, but when players didn't have to come here, mind you, I'm not talking about a player that should have been here that didn't come here, Scatteroo. I'm talking about when a player didn't have to come here, right? And I was impressed by some of the other players here. That means that player, at least in the eyes of the scouts, because what they're hearing tells them they don't need to be here, right? Trey Harris doesn't need to be competing with Noel or Noel. Still not sure the correct. I should have asked him. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't need to do that. So I already know in the NFL's eyes, he's a level above. And I just like him. I like him a lot. I like him a lot. He wasn't here this week, but I like him a lot. To me, he's like I said, little baby AJ Brown.
I know the John and Mitch aren't on this mock, but they've consistently drafted Trey Harris way before this spot. So they're very high on him. I can't argue with the logic that you laid out that he wasn't here, and there were a lot of other guys that were. So you were up again, 207, my friend. What are you doing?
See, I'm really, really struggling with these, right? Because it's this fine line between what I just saw this week looked really good in a couple instances, or do I go again with another player that wasn't here?
What's your gut, man? Like, if you were literally on the clock doing a rookie draft right now, knowing that there's an entire summer market that is going to develop with this whole class, forget about what you saw at the Senior Bowl. Don't forget about it, but you get what I'm saying. Like, think, like, if you were really in this spot, like, what would you want to do? Bro, it's okay to say, I want to get out of this tier. What is it?
I do. But you guys are going to hate this pick, and I don't care. I literally don't care. And people could get in the comments and talk all that shit they want to. I literally don't give a shit. I'm taking Tez. I don't care. I'm taking Tez. I just am. We came in, me and Scott drove here. There's a horror story behind that. Me and Scott drove the last 10 hours here, right? Trains, planes, and automobiles, and heart attacks, and all types of things, right? It was just bananas. But anyway, we're getting the height and weight measurements as they're coming in. someone's sharing them with us on Discord. Make sure you join the DD Fantasy community, join our Discord. And we said, 156 pounds for Tez, bro. He's dead. I don't want any part of him. Like, I'm completely out. I don't want him. It's not going to happen. And then I got here. And then he eviscerated every cornerback that tried to guard him. Like, just absolutely, like, there wasn't a time he wasn't open. Now, he is going to be limited to the role he plays. And this could be dangerous in the sense that, he could be, and I don't mean this in a punny way, like he could be like Tank Dell light, meaning like he's not going to get the usage or the volume that Tank Dell saw that really set him apart in year one. But I think this is the type of player in the preseason, right? When he's out there and he just rips an 80-yarder, people are going to be like, yeah, I like this kid a lot. So I'm going to go with Tez here. I'm going to go with it. You bring the hate if you want to. I don't care. You didn't see him.
That's all right. I mean, there's we might even get some Shane interaction with Tez Johnson, talking to him a little bit here in Mobile. This is a tough spot for me, honestly, because I can really search deep for some of the ADV narratives that are going to develop on these players. And Ray already said it earlier, between Mason Taylor and Harold Fannin, like, how do you think through those? And I'm faced with that decision. That's where I want to go. I think if you're right on a tight end in this format, given what people in Dynasty are probably searching for, that's probably the appropriate spot to look. We have some other players that we've taken in previous mocks that we're clearly not looking at in this spot. But I'm going to still take Harold Fannin over Mason Taylor. But I want to talk through the process a little bit on that, because I think this would have been blasphemy to even consider somebody else at tight end 3 before Fannin, before Senior Bowl week. I do think he still gets drafted higher than Mason Taylor, but that doesn't mean much if we're talking a guy that goes in middle of round 2 and early round 3. Like, we're talking 25 picks difference, 20 picks difference. I don't think that matters nearly as much as just understanding the type of bet you are making. I think there's still a lot of people. One thing I've been doing is searching on social media. I'll just search in a player and just read the past 15, 20 tweets on that player. Are they positive? Are they negative? What are they saying? There's still a cult following on Harold Fannin. People that look at him and go, I can see him being this uber athletic tight end that immediately comes in and he can play in the slot and he can immediately command volume. And Mason Taylor, even though he had a great week, I don't really know about him, why didn't he get better from his freshman year till this year? And I don't want to draft another tight end that just becomes Cade Otton or something. Like, if all I'm getting is that, give me the shot on Harold Fannin. But I also acknowledge Harold Fannin could be a guy that is an outlier, that the bet doesn't look good right away. He's not on the field that much, and you're wondering, did I just draft somebody that I'm never going to be able to move? So lock Fannin in. But I think you could have gone either way. I just wanted to explain how I would break that tie with what we know right now this early on in the process. So, Ray, you are up. Back-to-back picks, sir.
Right here at the 209 spot, when you look at the receivers that are off of the board and you think about realistically where they're projected to go, both Trey Harris and Tez Johnson, let's just be conservative and say they're day 2 picks. So I'm going to be very honest with you. I have very little interest in even clicking a wide receiver at this point. There are a couple that I like, but it's just layered in pure Devi hopium. Isaiah Bond, I have no clue. I've got no clue where he's going to go. Zero indication. He was worse than Matthew Golden. He might at this point, if I'm at the 209, what I'm not doing is probably chasing the receiver position. I'm probably out until much later, based on the type of players that are on the board, the strength of this class, and the projected draft capital. I can't see another one that I feel good pressing draft on. So I'm going to lean into the strengths of this class, which is the running back position and the tight end position. And when I look at the running back and some of the players that are on the board and one guy who is not here, but I still think you talk about a cult following for Harold Fannin. There's one even greater for Cam Scatterbull, a player that I think could be a day 2 pick in the NFL draft. So right here, I'm going to lean back into the strength of this class, which is running back. And I'm going to take Cam Scatterbo, running back out of Arizona State. And then at the 210 spot, this team is on the clock, and Scatterbo's off the board. Harold Fannin is off of the board. Tez and Trey Harris came off of the board right before that. Again, leaning back into the strength of this class. At 210, what are you thinking? You got Travis Hunter, a receiver early. The running back class is still incredibly deep. There are 10 more running backs that I like in this class, and another 6 or 7 receivers I'd be fine with taking a shot later. So I'm looking at either Jalen Milroe at this spot, who I've got a lot of hesitation and reservation about. And then you also have Mason Taylor, who I believe is right there in line with Harold Fannin. I'm going to break the tie with a quarterback that I believe is probably still going to be drafted somewhere on round 2, round 3. I think he's probably closer to an end of round 2, early round 3 pick. But in this format, the boom that I would get if he were to start and if he got some opportunity and looked good based on the running back that can take here at the 210 or the running back that I get at the 310, I'm just going to make a bet that at the 310, this team who took Travis Hunter and who's about to take Jalen Milroe is still going to get a very quality running back at the 310. And the quarterback option that's going to be available at the 310 is going to be significantly worse than Milroe. Like at this point, it's almost over for me with quarterback. It's just about over. So I'm going to take the guy that's got the rushing upside. I think Jalen Milroe is an appropriate pick here at the 210 spot.
Ray, I think you nailed the Milroe pick. That's where I was going at 211. This was right around where Jalen Hurts went back when he got drafted. You have the Alabama narrative. You have the first name Jalen narrative. You have the same agent who represents Jalen Hurts is representing Jalen Milroe. I mean, there's whether you may look at this pick that Ray just made and say, Ray, you just lit that pick on fire. This guy can't play. Right. But you also articulated that this is probably a player that is still going to get drafted in the range where the team is not looking at him as he is our developmental 5-year from now backup quarterback plan long term. It is going to be, we're going to get him in here. We know the skill sets that he brings to the table, and there's going to be a window. And it may be a window that goes by so quickly, and it's obvious after 2 quarters that it's not going to work. But it doesn't matter if you have to wait till the day before that 2 quarters happens. You're going to have probably an upward momentum asset that you have at a cost that is very reasonable for a guy that we've taken as high as, I think, 107, 108 in these pre-draft mocks. I mean, is 1 week of 3 days of practice going to completely destroy that? I think from a ADV perspective a little bit, but the bet I think is too strong to make. So I love that pick. I'm going to go at 211. There's actually 2 picks that I think are very appropriate here. We've already talked about the theory between running backs and tight ends, but I'm with Ray. I think there's a lot of running backs I'm still interested in, as much as I would love to take one that was very impressive this week that I still think people like a lot. I'm not going to. I'm going to not let Mason Taylor go any further, because then I think we're getting into some tight ends that they are okay, but I don't really have conviction on draft capital, on exactly what a role is going to be. So I think he's got to go here. Now we have a little bit of a tier break at tight end where maybe a few more get picked, but I feel like this is the last one that I'm very confident goes day 2. Maybe even high day 2, maybe even late round 2, which would make his profile even more impressive. So Mason Taylor, Shane, this is where we usually end the mocks, but we're going to have to go another round. So this should be fun. So you are at the 212. And again, the best team in the league here picking, and then the worst team picking back to back. So what are you doing?
Getting annoyed with both of you. Dylan Sampson, not here. I keep going with guys that aren't here. He's a guy a lot of people like. I think if you draft him or if he's on the board right here, a lot of people would be surprised that he's still available. And I got to be honest with you, I wouldn't be, because this is just a deep class. You know what I mean? I don't know how great it is. I just know that it has a lot of quality players that you're going to be able to add to your roster. So at this point, I'm all about, these rounds. I'm usually, what's the most upside I can get from the player, right? Like I'm throwing like darts. Unfortunately, with those upside darts, a lot of times they just come back down and hit you straight in the head, and don't actually give you what you were hoping for. I think I'm going a little safer here with Sampson. Like I said, I think he's someone that the community likes, and that if need be, I can move him. And if not, if he lands in the right situation, the right committee, because most backfields are going to be committee backfields, that he could still be very productive. Going back to back, he didn't have the best week here out of the remaining running backs, but I would be absolutely foolish to draft the one that did here, because I'll be able to get him, I don't know, the end of this draft, or excuse me, the end of this round, or maybe even later. I'm going to go ahead and take Devin Neal. He's still a player that people like, really, really like. And I don't know how to word this, right? Like, I expected more out of him this week. He didn't look bad, but I think he looked good enough that if you came in with a preconceived notion of what he is, you'd leave with that, right? I don't think you're going to see tweets that say Devin Neal is a faller. I don't think you're going to see anything like that. At most, you won't see him mentioned at all. So the thought that you had on him before this week, you're still going to hold. So I'll take Neal here. And again, I'm not trying to imply that he was bad. I'm just trying to imply he didn't separate himself the way I thought he would. But here, I think it's a good pick, like I said, because, again, I've been looking at social media too. I haven't seen anybody on the town on him on Twitters or on Blue Sky or wherever saying like, oh, this guy had a terrible week. So I think his week was fine. And I think, again, if you would have told people 2 weeks ago that you could get him here, I think most people would be shocked.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because if Devin Neal would have had the week that the guy I'm about to pick had, people would be going, man, he should be going where Travis Hunter and Luther Burden went. And instead, he falls to the third round, which just shows you how volatile running backs can be on many things. It's not just the Senior Bowl. There's going to be ones that people don't like at the Combine. There's going to be ones that people don't like what their pro day numbers were there. There's going to be people that see him drafted in a certain range or to a certain team, and the swings for the running backs are crazy. So I'm going to go with Brashard Smith at 302, only because I think there's a cult following that has developed for him. And Ray said it a bunch this week. I heard it numerous times in the crowd. Is just he does something that might be the best in the class at what he does. And people like receiving running backs. They like running backs that can get open against pretty much anybody, can run routes out of the backfield. They're not just dump-off specialists. They're guys where you can watch 2 or 3 targets and you go, that's a receiver. And he literally is a converted receiver. So he was very impressive. We were consistent saying he was one of the top 2 backs here from day one. It was him and Ollie Gordon. It wasn't Devin Neal. It wasn't anybody else. It wouldn't have been Dylan Sampson. It wouldn't have been Cam Scatterbo. It would have been these 2. So I love getting him here at the 302, because I can sell people in a PPR league that, man, this guy could be the third down back. And imagine if he lands in a spot where they go, ooh, that team really loves to target the running back, or they play this type of running back every time it's third down, or anytime they get into a hurry-up offense. I think he's an easy sell. So Brashard Smith, 302, running back out of SMU. Ray, what are your thoughts on that Sampson, Neal, Smith turn? Because I think we're starting to really get into just preference with those running backs. And what's your read on Sampson not being here? Do you think that kind of hurt or helped him, given how impressive some of the RBs were here?
Yeah, I think it's it's almost similar to me selecting Scatterbo, because I agree with you. I don't think Scatterbo would have been the more I go through this exercise, I just love the pick of Ollie Gordon, this player that a lot of people left for dead after his junior season. But you come here, and it was very obvious that he was just different than some of the other guys. And Brashard Smith was the same way. He was the best pass-catching running back here. And I don't think any of us walk away thinking Brashard Smith is the next 25 touch per game back, but I could definitely see a world in where he gets 10 to 12 touches and he's just efficient and good. He was dominant in the receiving game. I think he's a player who's going to continue to rise. He's a player who is bigger than Devon Achane, and there was somebody else we were talking about that profiled as one of those kind of scat running backs. He's bigger than that guy as well. I don't think he's as fast as Achane at all, but that's sort of that. Those 3 running backs after Ollie, Scatterbo, Neal, Smith, Harvey, they're all kind of in the same mold. They really are, even Dylan Sampson. So I can't disagree with any of those picks that were made with those guys, with Neal, with Brashard Smith. I think those were fine picks.
You're up. 2 picks in a row. What you doing here?
All right here in the 3rd round, I'm on this squad, and I do think this is a good spot for me to take a shot on a wide receiver. And my big thing for 2025 is hashtag situation matters. And when I'm looking at the archetype of these receivers and how I believe that they profile to be used on their respective teams at the next level, I think there's one guy that profiles as an outside wide receiver that can be on the field in 12 personnel, which allows them to be on the field 75, 80% of snaps. And it was a guy who was committed to the Senior Bowl and pulled out. And I believe he pulled out for a reason. And I'm going to take Elic Eomanor out of Stanford, 6'2", 210 pounds. If anybody is wondering how good he is, just go pull up his tape versus Travis Hunter. And if I were his agent, I would tell scouts the same thing. That's why I wasn't in Mobile. I'm big, I'm fast, I'm strong, and I dominated the Heisman Trophy winner in a head-to-head matchup. And it wasn't like I beat him a little bit. He dominated him. So I think right here at the 303 spot, Elic is a player that I think is going to get top 70 draft capital. I believe he's going to be drafted on day 2 at some point. So right here at the 3-3 spot, I would be comfortable with taking him here, knowing that there's some backs that aren't even in sleeper, like Kyle Monungai, that I think whether they're late day 3 picks or UDFAs are going to get an opportunity to make a roster. So I still like Elic. He profiles unlike any other receiver that is truly left on the board. So I'll take Elic Eomanor there. And at the 304 spot with this team on the board, knowing the format, I still think there's some good tight ends on the board. This is one where I am going to dive into a running back again who is not here. And I'm going to take DJ Giddens out of Kansas State. I think he's a really good running back. He profiles, he's a bigger guy, kind of like Ollie. He's 6 foot, I believe 6 foot, 6'1", 215 plus pounds, and he can catch the ball. So DJ Giddens, a little out of sight, out of mind. But I think right here at the 3-4 spot, I'd be pretty excited to get this kid.
Ray, I'm interested in your thoughts on, because there was last year, if everyone remembers, there was a clear, and I mean clear, cutoff at receiver where after it's usually Javon Baker or Luke McCaffrey, nobody wanted any of the other receivers. I mean, they literally were UDFAs. I mean, Javon Baker and Tez Walker went 3 picks apart in the NFL draft. One was a sleeper and a darling. The other one was dead. And so you took Eomanor. I like your argument as to why he wasn't here and why that was probably a good decision for him to not be here while all the other receivers kind of just toiled in, they're fine. But like, if he can send that message that I don't need to be here, and then nobody here just blows everything out of the water, he looks even better for not being here. So I think that logic is very sound. Are there even any other receivers that, just knowing how players typically look from like a value scale perspective, would there be even any other receivers that you would look at?
There's one more, and it's Isaiah Bond. It's Isaiah Bond for his name, not his game, because he was the 2nd or 3rd best receiver. I think he was the 3rd best pass catcher, potentially 4th behind Jaden Blue, if you want to go that deep. 4th or 3rd best pass catcher on the University of Texas this year. But he has a name and he has a superpower, which he is very, very fast. And people like very, very fast players. After Isaiah Bond, there isn't a receiver left in this draft that I have to draft. Not one. And I think at that point, I would let everybody else make the bet on every receiver that's available. Restrepo, Jalen Royals, give me the running backs and tight ends. I'll take every last one of them at this point over any other receiver.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I mean, you know how I feel about Bond. I think he's truly a wild card right now because no one's really talked about him. But you can also use the narrative, well, no one's really talked about him, right? He's got a name. He has some pedigree. He was at a big program, and he declared early, seemingly, because people can say, well, he must have got some good feedback, right? Like, he thinks he stacks up pretty good in this class, even if you don't think he does. So I think that's probably one you can save for some ADV right there. And that's the sole argument is drafting him for that reason. I'm going to go back to the running back. Well, there's literally 4, 5, or 6 that I could take that I would be totally fine with. This is where if you scroll up and just look at where like Scattaboo was taken, or Devin Neal was taken, or Brashard Smith was taken, or DJ Giddens was taken, or Dylan Sampson was taken. Like, this is where if you told me instead of Scattaboo or Sampson or Neal, I could have 3 of these next 8 picks, I would do it without even seeing the board. Like, I would just say, give me the 305, the 309, and the 312, and you can have the, what was Scattaboo, the 209, 210. Like, you can just have that pick, get your guy, because I'll just take the volume at this point. So I don't think these picks have a ton of value difference over the next 8, especially if you're looking at running back. I'm going to not even be able to take all the ones that I want to take. That's how many there are. So I'm going to lean towards RJ Harvey at this pick. We were able to talk to RJ Harvey. He thinks he can run a sub 4.4, whether he does or not. I like to hear that a running back that could potentially get close to that there's a lot of people that expected RJ Harvey to be what Brashard Smith was coming into this week. Not saying he was bad. He just wasn't as impressive as some of the others. But I do think he does probably go round 4, early day 3. I think he gets drafted a little higher than some of the ones that I also like that may not have that. Well, he was a early day 3 pick or a late day 2 pick. There's always that in the background, but I still think people like RJ Harvey. But I just want to point out, there may be a running back in 10 minutes that goes 5 picks away. And I'm like, man, I really like how Shane or Ray are selling me on that guy over RJ Harvey. So he's there at 305. Shane, 306 and 307, kind of middle of the pack. What's your consideration with maybe kicking this pick to the future or trying to get, 2 future thirds to use later instead of just committing to a player here? What do you think?
No, I would love that because I don't want to have to make decisions here. Because like you said, there's a lot of ambiguity. I think, nope, didn't say that word, right? And you definitely didn't say it either. So I shouldn't even try to quote you there. It's not clear. There's not a lot of clarity in this part of the draft. It is going to be just like, all right, well, Shane, right now he's drafting Jalen Noel. And you know why? He saw him at the Senior Bowl and he liked him. And you know what he liked about him? Fact that, besides what he saw at the Senior Bowl, he had 7 career 50-yard touchdowns in college. I'm shooting ceiling right here. It's that 3rd round. It's the middle of the 3rd round. If I can't get future thirds for the pick, if I can't find some fool in my league that'll give me a second, next year's second, because they really have to have their guy here, which might happen, I'll just take him. And and I don't want to sound flippant about not being convicted on any of these players. It's more that there's so many of them. You know what I mean? Like you were alluding to. There are so mmany players here that I could pick and be like, yeah, that's fine. And it's, if I miss on one of these
you
players,
want Noel? You want Noel?
Yeah. Sorry.
All right, we'll do a sleeper doesn't have him in here, so we'll do a whatchamacallit placeholder. Just want to make sure Jalen Noel, wide receiver, Iowa State.
Right. So he had a good week, right? And like I said, he has a nose for long plays, long scoring touchdowns, and I'm always going to have an affinity for those. And one of the things that's going to happen again, preseason hits, dude breaks off a 60-yard touchdown, people buzz. Maybe I can move him. Maybe I couldn't move him for 2/3 right now, but after that preseason game, maybe I can, or maybe I can even add a third to that and move him for a second. So that's where I'm going. That's
Shane, real quick, before you make your 307, I want to just talk to the people about this process real quick, because it's something that I rack my brain with constantly. We talked about this in the Discord the other night. When you draft a receiver here that is not going to go in the first 2 rounds, he's just not. There's a very good chance he doesn't even go in the first 3 rounds. You draft what historically is a roster clogger profile. I want you to be very specific as to what are you looking for from the ceiling perspective, from the narrative perspective. Like, when do you decide, okay, he had a nice play in the preseason, I'm going to now sell him for a third and a fourth or a third and a run. Like, it's not always going to be all you just immediately get triple what you paid, right?
No. But so that's not profit, right? People, and I'm not great at gambling because I make this mistake, right? People don't like small profits because it's not all at once. You know what I mean? Like, you make small profit. That's how you accrue it. If you're drafting Noel thinking that you're going to be able to move him for a first,
no,
it's not going to happen.
That's a cop out. I'm talking about you picked him at the 306.
Right. You're not letting me finish my point, bro. What I'm saying is that's not going to happen. If I can move him for a third and a third, gone. As soon as I can do it. I'm not waiting. I'm not going, well, let me see what can happen next week. You know what I mean? And people will go, oh, well, that's how you miss out on Puka. Puka's an outlier. That's how you miss out on Tank. Tank is an outlier, bro. You remember those, but you do not remember the other 57 wide receivers that were in that draft that popped that you could have sold for one more third, and then they disappeared into the ether, into the never round, whatever. They just disappeared, and you were never able to get anything for them. And instead, it's the middle of whatever month we're in, the end of January, and you're trying to trade these roster clogger wide receivers for any 5th round rookie pick that you can. So I'm saying as soon as I can make a profit, and that profit could be, I'll tell you right now, that profit could be a fourth on top of the third. It's profit. We're done. Go.
No, I just wanted you to articulate what that looks like, because I think a lot of people get hung up in the I'm shooting for the upside, but then I'll accept the profit that's only an extra third or an extra fourth, and then they don't make the deal, and then they wonder a year later, why did I draft a 4th round receiver in the 3rd round of my rookie draft, knowing that it's usually a bad bet. So I'm glad you explained it, because I don't think I'm not even saying you're right or wrong on the player. I just wanted to put the process out there. So 307, you got another pick. What are you doing?
Flapping my gums, because again, there's no one here that I particularly love. Sorry, don't mind me. All right, let me go with a fun back. Jordan James, fun offense. Hopefully he's on the board, because that's going to be embarrassing if I go back-to-back picks where the players aren't even available.
He's there.
Okay,
he's
good.
there.
Again, I think he's the type of back that could get a little bit of buzz, right? I'm not comparing him to Bucky, but like how Bucky got buzz. Now, Bucky, it worked out if you held on to him, right? If you held on to him all year, you're able to move him now for more. But I think he could get that type of similar buzz. Again, even if his play style is, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not exactly comparing him that way. Just more from can I move him later for, again, a small profit? And that's mostly what I'm trying to do here with these players. Like, I truly don't expect any of these players to turn into starters for me. If somehow they stay on my roster and do okay, but really all I'm trying to do is take this and flip it later for just a little bit more. So I'm trying to grab players that I think, we talk about ADV, that I think could get some ADV behind them.
If somehow I could trade almost any second rounder or just get these 5 picks from 308 to 312, I would absolutely love to do that. There's 5 players I really want. There's only 4 picks left. I'm going to get to take 2 of them. The first one, this is a 15-second narrative. It's Trevor Etienne. His name is Etienne. He is a running back. He's explosive. He can do a bunch of different things good. I don't know where he gets drafted. I don't know where he lands. But it sells itself. He got asked numerous questions this week about his brother, and I think the narrative sells itself just given his name. And he's from a Power 5 program that's produced a ton of good running backs in the past. I think it's an easy sell. So Trevor Etienne, 308. Ray, these are your last 2 picks. I know there's 2 players you really like that I almost took, and I'm guessing you're going to take at least one. But what are you doing, my friend?
So just for the people looking, Corey Kiner is the substitute for Trevor Etienne, running back out of Georgia. This is Corey Kiner. This is a Cincinnati running back. He's in this class. But Trevor Etienne, great pick. That's where I was going to go with the 309 spot. Here at the 309, again, when I'm looking at these receivers, Restrepo and Royals and Higgins and Savion and Besh, these are just guys that I think at best, they're the third receiver on the field for a team today. And that doesn't even mean they're the third option, but they're the third receiver at best. And I don't believe that is the type of fantasy bet that I like to make. I don't want to make those bets. I still believe there are a couple of tight ends that I believe could be the tight end one at some point, sooner rather than later on their teams. And one of those guys, a lot of people may not know about, but we'll talk about him in a second. But it's egregious that Isaiah Bond has fallen this far. I'm taking him right here. This is a player that we've seen go as high as the 201, 202 in some mocks. And I know he may not be as good as Matthew Golden, but I don't believe he's in Tez Johnson, Trey Harris, Elick Io Manor, and whoever Shane took right here, Jalen Noel. I don't believe he's that much worse than some of those guys, and people love him. He goes out there and catches one deep pass in preseason, and people are all over Isaiah Bond. So I'm not going to let Isaiah Bond slip any further. And right here, I'm going to stick true to my board. It's unfortunate because I think there are like 5 other running backs. Woody Marks, I thought, had a really good week here in Mobile, and I think he's going to be – I talked to somebody who believes he could be a 4th-round pick, high day 3 pick in the draft. But I'm sticking to the strength of this class, and I'm leaning into taking shots of finding one of these guys that can hit and people's thirst and desire to have a tight end. I'm going to go with Oronde Gadsden, the tight end out of Syracuse. He's big, he's wiry, he's athletic. I've talked to a couple of scouts this week who say he reminds him of Darren Waller. So right here, a player who's had a productive collegiate career prior to the ACL tear. I want Oronde Gadsden here at the 310 spot, I believe after the combine in tight end premium formats. He won't last this far. He will not fall to the back of the 3rd round in a 175. So I'll take Oronde Gadsden with my final pick.
And anybody that remembers had a dad that played in the NFL, played receiver in the NFL. So he's got some bloodlines there too. So that's a pick that, because he wasn't here and so many other tight ends shined, that's one that's kind of been lost in the sauce a little bit. But I like the explanation.
He was good at the Shrine. From everything that I heard, he was dominant at the Shrine. So good to go.
Yep. All right. So I have one more pick. I could take Woody Marks. I was surprised Ray didn't take Woody Marks with one of his 2, but again, I like Woody Marks, but I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 other running backs. I'm like, I can sell you on one of those guys being better. So I'm actually going to pass on all of the running backs. I'd love to go Woody Marks, Manungai, Tootin, Damian Martinez. Like I could look at all of these and say they could be better than guys we've already taken. But I don't think any of them have the Trevor Etienne narrative because they don't have the name. And I'm going to take the last tight end because we talked about the tight ends all day. I'm going to go with Ray's guy, Jake Brenningstool, as the last tight end probably that I would draft. Now, the caveat being that I think you could also sell me on a couple other tight ends. I think Terrence Ferguson, you could argue for him over Brenningstool. I think it's 50-50. And then Gunnar Helm was not at the Senior Bowl, but there's going to be people that go, the same logic for why Io Manor wasn't there. They could say, well, Gunnar Helm knew he was better than everybody here, which absolutely probably wasn't true.
Well, talk about Brenningstool a little bit and what you saw, because a lot of people aren't going to know the name or vaguely remember the name. So why we've got Eli Stovers, but that's Jake Brenningstool, tight end out of Clemson.
I think just looking at him and Ferguson, I just like the way he moved better than Ferguson. But I think it can go 50-50. I do think both of them will be drafted in the range of like their 3rd or 4th round picks. They're not going to be one of the top 5 tight ends off the board. But once we get their RAS scores, once we see what offenses they go to, you could literally interchange the 2. I just picked the one that we really haven't talked about at all. We've talked about Ferguson a little bit. His name has come up in prior mocks. Brenningstool, we haven't talked about at all. And honestly, he wasn't really on my radar until Mobile, but I liked what I saw. So I break the tie for him here. Shane. Last pick. What you doing here, my friend? Close it out for us.
So I thought you were going Ferguson there, and I got all upset and sad that I was getting sniped on another tight end. And then I realized I don't know that I actually want him, and I actually want Woody Marks. Woody Marks, the first day, I wasn't impressed, particularly. Second day, though, he looked really good as a receiver. It's just that simple. He looks like a really good back out of the backfield that can be a weapon. I don't know. Look, most running backs at this level or at this range are probably going to be committee backs, right? Because I'm getting them at 312. So it's not like he has day 2 capital, most likely. So he will be a committee back. And I think he has a skill set that's going to play. If I have to have one player out of the committee, I want the one that's going to catch passes. That's the one I want because we play in PPR leagues. If, my grandpa comes back from the dead and wants to play in standard leagues, I'll go another way. But in this case, I'll go with Woody Marks. I think he's like I said, it's PPR. If I have to have a committee back, I want the ones catching passes.
Fair. Well, guys, we're done. 3-round mock. These are going to be fun to continue to do 3 rounds now that we have a lot more players on the radar. Ray, I'll kick it to you to close it out. We could talk about 20 more players at least that we want to just mention. But biggest takeaway from what's still on the board? Biggest takeaway for people that are going, wow, some of those 3rd-round picks, I wouldn't have done that. There's still 6 or 7 guys I would have taken over the last 4 or 5 picks that you guys made. Like, how do you look at not just the 3rd, but how are you looking at the damn waivers in the 4th? Like, there's still guys I really want. What's your takeaway from just how deep the class is now that we have a lot more names on the radar?
Yeah, I'm looking at every pick after probably, let's just say the Harold Fannin pick, and I could even put him ahead of Tez Johnson potentially. I would have taken Trevor Etienne and Woody Marks over Cam Scatterbo. Give me the 3, whatever, the 3.8 and the 3.12 over the 2.9. The more we go through this process, and what I think is going to happen is this. We've had one set of narratives for all of these players for multiple weeks, for a couple of months now. It's only been one narrative around Ollie, one narrative around Elijah, one narrative around Jalen Milroy, one narrative around these players. And I think what's going to end up happening is, as we go through the pre-draft process, the Senior Bowl, the Combine, the Pro Days, the NFL Draft, analyzing the situations, we're going to create more narratives, and it's going to give us more diversity in some of these mocks. But the one thing that I go back to is when I look at this board, the running backs and the tight ends are deep. I cannot understate, and I don't know which one's going to be good. I don't know if it's going to be Ollie or Scatterbo. But if I can defer those picks to the 3rd or 4th round, there are players that we haven't even discussed that are going to be drafted or UDFAs. And it's really going to boil down to the situation in which they land. There are multiple Senior Bowl backs that we didn't touch. This class is going to be a fun class. But for me, Scott, my favorite pick was Ollie Gordon, because I think at that point, he looks, and if you take a combination of his best and worst, he just does something that some of the other guys do not do. He looks a certain way. He profiles a certain way that no other back in this class does. And I really like that 205 spot. I do want to hear from you guys. Do you think I'm crazy for taking Arroyo over Fannin? This is a take that nobody would have coming into Mobile, but there were a few people who said prior to Mobile that he was the best field stretching tight end in this class. And again, it was 3 days of practice, but it wasn't close who the best skill position offensive player was. And it was this tight end from Miami. And you're starting to see more and more people, not just is he the tight end 3. I mean, you have people, I'm not going to say names, but say I think he's closer to tight end 2 than he is tight end 5 in this class. So I think this is going to be fun. There are a lot of polarizing players. Like you got Tez Johnson there, and I agree with Shane. He's 160, but he was awesome. he was great. You know, we didn't take a Restrepo. We didn't take some of these guys. There's a lot left to be ironed out through this 25 process. A lot.
Shane, I'll kick it to you for any thoughts, but I wanted to ask you a real quick targeted question about the tight end class, because a lot of people you'll hear on other pods and other content creators say if the tight end class is what's strong, then it's a shitty class. And obviously this is a 1.75 tight end premium, but are you at all hesitant to be just ripping tight end after tight end after tight end with, and I'm not going to crap on you right this second for that take, but you've said many times on other places that if you're not a top 3 or 4 tight end, then you don't matter. And the odds are there ain't 6 tight ends that are cracking the top 4 in Dynasty from this class. There's probably a lot that become, hey, a Jake Ferguson, a Cade Otton, a Hunter Henry. You know, they're good, solid starters. But unless you capitalize on the fact that Elijah Arroyo has a lot of hype and back and ADV, if he just becomes Hunter Henry, there's going to be a very quick, he's not a difference maker, let's move on. And those types of players don't have a lot of demand once the sexiness wears off. Does that scare you a little bit that we've now drafted what do we go? 9 tight ends deep in this draft?
We drafted 9.
I think we went at least, 8.
Wow.
Tight ends, I believe.
It ain't that damn.
7, fine. But
no, look. Okay.
No, I was going to say Ferguson could have gone with one of those picks. I think the point is we've moved the whole tight end class up, but then we're also making a lot of arguments about, well, people are excited about him, which I agree, but only for a certain period of time. And you really have to know what you're doing or what you're trying to do when you make those picks.
Well, I was just going to say, yes, I am captain, shoot for the upside, fuck the floor, right? That's just the way. That's my way. I'm sorry, people don't like it. But Arroyo especially is like the epitome of that, right? Like, this is a dude that just based off of the athleticism, the hands, everything, really, right? You look at him and you go, no. This is a guy that I think could be a top 6 tight end if things break right? I actually don't feel that way about Harold Fannin Jr. I don't. Tyler Warren, obviously, we all feel that way. In a year's time, 2 years' time, will he be the next Dalton Kincaid where I'm like, all right, I'm ready to recycle it? Yes. That's 100% possible, and I'm okay with that being the same process in another year, 2 years. If I'm only using air quotes, the 205, and I'm just recycling them for these guys where I can then just trade them again for another second and start the process again and keep trying to hit that unicorn, knowing that, look, there's 12 tight end ones. There's generally 6 that matter. It's a very small chance that I'm going to be the one that hits on them. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so few of them, but I'm okay with recycling, re-roll.
So let me just say this. I personally don't think any of that stuff matters. Like, I don't think becoming the tight end 6 is the goal. Becoming the top, Dalton Kincaid's a top 7 tight end right now. What does that matter? Like, it doesn't, the number next to the name is not what's important. What I'm chasing is the thing that seems to be the desired asset in this game in this period of time. And when I look at all those positions, I don't know if Arroyo's going to be any better than DJ Giddens, than RJ Harvey. But my projection is that Tez Johnson has no shot to become a wide receiver 1. 0. There's no chance. Physically, his skill set, the way he's going to be deployed, there's no shot. There's 35 running backs that I like, and I really don't know which one I want. That's why I'd rather just take a bunch of them in 3 or 4. But when I'm looking at the Arroyos, when I'm looking at Jackson Dart, when I'm looking at Harold Fannin and some of these outlier positions, if people believe that one thing will become the one, regardless of where they end up ranking in the order of tight ends, that thing has more value than DJ Giddens ever will, outside of Giddens going ape shit and becoming the next sleeper running back. I'm just playing an odds game here. I'm playing the probability when I've got a strong tight end class with athletic tight ends and then just a bunch of good running backs, I'm going to take the shot on the thing that people are going to gravitate to is in those onesie positions like tight end. Like, I want the shot in a good tight end class. I want to get some darts at ones that people think could become all world. People thought that Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid and a lot of these tight ends would be great, elite. And the reality is they're probably what Elijah Arroyo and Harold Fannin are. Like, I think that is a reasonable outlook. So when I'm doing these mocks, I'm not chasing 1, 2, 3 at the position. I'm just chasing the thing that people want. And right now, people want to find the next Bowers. People want to find the next this. And there's so many backs that I just don't believe that my odds lie into trying to pinpoint the right one at the 208. Just give me the tight ends. And maybe that logic is flawed, but that's where I'm at. I just don't foresee any of these wide receivers becoming elite fantasy options at any point or being used on their teams in a way that would yield elite fantasy production, where I can see a world where Harold Fannin or Loveland or Arroyo or Mason Taylor are the primary targets. And even if that means that they're just Hunter Henry, as you keep alluding to, or they're just Dalton Schultz, or they're just Cade Otton, those things had massive value at points in time. They may not have been the tight end one, but there was a moment in time where people were trading shit for Cade Otton. I need a reliable target, and I want that guy. And I think I'm just there. With this class, the receivers are poor. Give me the thing that has the chance to be the one on their team, and I think that's the tight end spot in this group.
See, and I don't think it is just limited to the tight end spot. Now, wide receiver, yes, it's probably very limited, right? And then the Tez, I feel like I don't want to keep beating the dead horse, right? We're trying to get a player where we think they can increase in value in this range, right? We're not talking about first round picks. We're talking about second round picks. We're looking at players that we're hoping will increase in value at some point, like soon, so that we can move them. Like I don't, at least I am. Generally, I don't look at my second round picks and go, that's going to be a guy that I stick in my lineup for the next 4 years. You know what I mean? Sure, it happens, but generally this is just a player I'm looking at. Like, can I move them in the future? Is there, like we keep saying, is there a narrative that I can find that I can see realistically happening? Right. And I know our community, and I know we get hard as steel when we see explosives. Right. So I like players that can give me explosives. Arroyo's actually, obviously in that set of players. Tez is in that set. Or I want running backs that have that receiving skill set, because what we end up doing a lot of times is we just go, wow, he's going to have 70 receptions, no problem. Not even thinking that, like, dude, that's a very small number of players that are ever going to do that at the running back position. Like, it's not what you think it is. Last year, I don't even know how many it was, probably 2 or 3. But in our minds, in the community's mind, I know that that's what they're going to think, right? Like taking Jalen Milrow at 211 or whatever. I don't think whoever of us drafted him is thinking he's going to be a starting quarterback one day, right? Or excuse me, he'll be a starting quarterback, but not for our rosters. I meant for our fantasy rosters. What we're thinking is that the community is going to like him enough, especially after he gets a first round pick, first round NFL draft. He's drafted in the first round, that I could then move him for more. Maybe it's just a first in 2026. Obviously not 27 that you're in my class, but maybe I could move him for a first in 2026. Maybe I could add to him and then go get another quarterback that's maybe not as highly thought of, but is probably better, and not probably better, will be better, like Kyler Murray or something like that. So I agree with most of your point. I just think it's not limited to just the tight ends. I think the running backs can get you there, and specific wide receivers can get you there, right? Not guys that I think are going to end up, and there's a reason we didn't take Restrepo, right? You know what I mean? That's not a guy that we can see like, oh, he's going to have a play in week 3 of the preseason that everyone's going to go crazy over. Like, that's just my thought process.
What's your outlook for RJ Harvey being an RB1 on his team? Or Giddens, or Smith, or Neal? What do you think they are?
I kind of think they're all committee backs.
Okay,
But-
what do you think Arroyo or Loveland or Fannin or Taylor could be? Are they committee tight ends?
No, I don't think so. I don't believe so.
Neither do I. And that's why I would take them over those guys.
Right. I got you.
I think we can sum it up with this. There's 3 points I want to make, and I'll make them very quick. 1, know your tendencies at a dynasty manager. My tendency is I play any RB on a 53. I'm willing to cycle through them. I'm willing to trade them. I did not draft a single running back outside of the top 15 in a rookie draft that I expect anything other. Maybe I'll be able to use them, or maybe I'll be able to trade them. If that's not your tendency, then don't just draft running back after running back after running back after running back, hoping you're going to hit the one that becomes the next Kyron Williams. That's not how I play at running back, but that's my tendency. If that's not yours, if you're going to go, well, I'm going to hold the Jalen Wrights of the world for 3 years, hoping they become the starter, then I wouldn't just draft every running back in this class. So that's the first point. Know your tendencies. The second point is understand your league market. We're talking about all these, what are other managers going to do and trade us for this or trade us for that? Your league's going to be individual. Have an idea of kind of how you think your league's going to react to Jalen Milroe versus Colston Loveland or Harold Fannin. Like, know that specific league economy when it comes to these different positions, because our opinion doesn't mean much when you're talking about your specific league. So that's the second point. I think the last point is all of this is based on a lot of hypotheticals. You know, we're just talking about players. We're just talking about reactions on a lot of these players. But the reality is there's a lot of narrative still to be created. And so I'm glad we were able to go through this for 3 rounds. There's a lot of players we didn't get to talk about, but I think that sums it up. Like, we're not playing Dynasty. All 3 of us, I know how all 3 of us play. You guys are 2 of the most active, aggressive players that I play with. Most of these picks, if these were real picks for us, they're not sitting on our roster for multiple years. We're not wading through a lot of these things. When Ray says he's drafted players because he thinks he could do something else with that player sooner rather than later, he's doing it. It isn't, well, you know, I'm gonna draw back when that opportunity comes. Like, he's doing it and will actually follow through with it. So that's where I will leave it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. There were a lot of raw reactions. I think we're probably still processing some of these picks. There's some that I'm even like, well, I kind of like Ray's argument more than my own. So I might even go back and change some of these. But if you could, like and subscribe to the channel, DDFFB. We'll engage with you in the comments. If you're not already part of our community, ddfantasyfootball.com. Join there, get access to the tools, and most importantly, the community where we do this stuff every single day, 24/7, 365, talking draft, talking dynasty value, trade questions, and most importantly, the engagement with the community. So thank you, everybody. We enjoyed this week in Mobile. It was a blessing to be with you guys. We had a lot of good conversations off air. We want to continue it with our community. So thank you. Like and subscribe to the channel. And with that, we'll sign off. Thank you all.